was dedicated to looking into the state of the art of STEM education in the partner countries based on each project's partner context, reality, as well as their networks. The first thing we did was to implement SELFIE. SELFIE is an online questionnaire that allows schools to customize it, to create a tailor-made version in order for school managers, teachers and students to assess the extent to which they are using digital tools and the digital setting in an educational approach. In order to do that, we designed an online platform specific to Geeks for Education. It described step by step what the partners and the schools needed to do to implement this tool. So, looking into the basic questions the SELFIE proposes, for instance, to give room for the schools to think about other questions that would be useful for their specific context and characteristics. So again, step by step, until the generation of the questionnaire, this platform allowed the partners and the schools to make sure that this would be user-friendly and to make sure that the teams that were going to be involved would be motivated in implementing it. So 27 schools implemented SELFIE. Some in France, some in Italy, in Portugal, Spain, Greece, Hungary. It was a process that reached around 3,000 participants. School teachers, school managers and students. Side by side with the implementation of SELFIE, the partners also dedicated time, also invested their energy to develop a practice collection within their countries, within their territories. So in these first months of the project, the consortium created a form, and it was an important process because the form was the basis from which we would gather concrete data. So we discussed what data we wanted to gather. We discussed in what format this data would be displayed. And finally, we got to a quite comprehensive data collection, geo-referenced and also with relevant information, of course, around STEM education. This output of the project presents what comes out of this data collection. It involved 33 practices that we analyzed and took some conclusions. If you explore this tool, you are able to look into each one of the practices collected and know more about them, as well as look into our conclusions. On average, the practices mapped exist for around 5 years. The majority of the practices are from the public sector, although a relevant number of them are private initiatives. The geographical scope is mainly international or national, but also a good third of them are local or regional. The majority of the practices that we look into take place in schools, but in general they happen in an interesting diversity of fields. A very big group of these practices are directed to children and young people from 8 to 17 years old. Engaged in these practices are mostly teachers and other educational actors, but we can also see civic groups in the community and parents, policymakers, members of other groups being involved. The majority of the practices that we mapped take place in a formal setting, 60% of them, but 40% of practices taking place in a non-formal setting is quite a relevant number. In what concerns the pedagogical approach, they are mostly collaborative, using experiential learning, project-based, and peer teaching or reflective. There was also a training and competence development component in this intellectual output of Geeks for Education. In July 2021, we met in Amarante, right in the moment where the pandemic started to allow us to get together, and we dedicated time to set the basis to build the bench learning workshops we were going to develop. After that, back home, each partner conducted a local bench learning workshop. These workshops gave room for the schools, the teachers that were involved in the schools, to look into the practices, take from them the elements that make them a good practice, and think about what concrete pedagogical tool would be interesting to develop and test in their context. In some cases, these were in-presence workshops. In other cases, they were online. We were still dealing with COVID-19 pandemic, but these were moments where the teachers, the people that were involved in the reflection process that was also conducted within Geeks for Education had the opportunity to think about what to do next, what Geeks for Education could bring next to the territory in case. This is how actually the formats that each partner developed took shape. So this first intellectual output was pretty much about looking into the state of the art, defining the baseline of our work. For that, we implemented the SELFIE tool, we made a practice collection, and we developed bench learning workshops all around involving our stakeholders, our partners at local level. The materials are there to be explored in our website, and it definitely set the basis for what was coming next. Enjoy!